Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen and today I am here with another Booker Prize Longlist review, and today I'll be talking about Universality by Natasha Brown. Now this is a book that I was actually kind of surprised to see make it on to the long list. Natasha Brown kind of came into the literary world with a bang. Her first novel, Assembly, was critically acclaimed. There were so many people that read this and loved it, myself included, and she just is a very fresh voice, and she has a lot to say. She provides us with an entertaining story, and she also is going to be talking about things that are relevant in today's society and also things that might be a little uncomfortable for a lot of people to digest. And she is a bold writer, and I really appreciated that about her first book. So when I heard that she had a new book coming out, I was super excited to read it. And then I started to hear some bad reviews about it and people saying that it didn't live up to their expectations for her as an author compared to what she delivered with Assembly. Now, I tend to take some of those reviews sometimes with a grain of salt. It could be that maybe the subject matter just wasn't in that reader's comfort zone or something that they related to, and it's not necessarily a dig on the book, it's more just a personal preference. So anytime I do hear reviews like that, I do try to, be the devil's advocate and give it a shot anyway, just to see, where I fall in line. And I will say that I did enjoy my time with Universality, but I also don't think that it was as spectacular or as groundbreaking as Assembly was, but I do think that it had a lot of good components to it, and we'll go ahead and talk about it. Now, another part of this book that was a little shocking is that this too had a little bit of controversy surrounding it, making it on to the long list. In my previous video for Love Forms, I did talk about how there was an issue with a potential conflict of interest between Sarah Jessica Parker and that author Claire Adam. And here with this book, it's a little controversial because Natasha Brown is actually slated to be the chair judge for the 2026 International Booker Prize. Now, I don't think that that necessarily constitutes a conflict. I think, once again, as I mentioned in my previous video, once you're in the literary community, it gets very difficult to completely remove yourself from all of the other authors out there. It is a small community, so I don't think that there is any issue with Natasha Brown being a judge or affiliated with one of the Booker Prizes, as well as being on the long list for this year's prize. So but I did just want to be clear about that, because I do know that there were some people that were bringing that up as possibly questioning whether or not this book had any reason to be on the long list in the first place. So as soon as I read the description of this book, I knew it was one that I was going to want to read, even if it wasn't by Natasha Brown. The concept of this sounded so interesting. So basically what happens with this book is that there is at the center a crime. Now, this book takes place during the COVID lockdown, and obviously during that lockdown there were restrictions and there were limitations on people putting together mass events and things like that. You couldn't have too many people in one place at one time, and there was this group that organized this illegal rave on this huge estate or this huge farm in the English countryside, and it was owned by this wealthy banker, I believe. Now, during this rave, there was this crime where ultimately someone got bludgeoned nearly to death by a gold bar. Now, that was very intriguing to me. I wanted to get to the bottom of that and figure out all of the players in it and, you know, who the victim was and ultimately who it was that did it. Now, at the very beginning of this book, all of those questions are answered. The book starts with a news article, and it is written by this girl named Hannah, or this woman named Hannah, and she is a freelance journalist, and this is kind of the story that is going to get her name out into the universe, and it's kind of her big break. So we start the book by reading this article, and we learn all of those things about the crime and who did it, and then we start to get into the other sections of the book. This book is divided up into several parts. The first part being the article, and then we start to get into some sections that are related to certain characters within or key players within the story of the overall crime. So we hear from Hannah. She is the person that wrote the article, and we get her perspective. And then we get the perspective of someone that was involved with the group that put on the rave. And then we hear from the banker, and we hear from the victim, and we're hearing from all of these different people directly from their perspective, but we also have that article to compare it to. So as we start to get into the book further and further, we start to learn that maybe there were liberties that were taken with the article, maybe things are not fully as they seem, and you know, we also start to learn about the repercussions of that article and how it impacted some of those people that were involved. Now, I don't want to give too much more of the story away. I think it really was a compelling read, and there's a lot to gather from it, and I think that Natasha Brown had a lot of important things that she wanted to bring up and talk about. I talked first of all about how with that article there were some liberties taken, so I think that part of the major theme that she wanted to hit home was what we are being fed as citizens and what we are getting from the media, and you know, how we process that, what we take as truth when it might not be the full truth, and how susceptible we are to media, and it basically gives us the information that we think that we need, but is it actually the truth, and how we handle that, and also how we take that information and go out into the world and interact with the people that the media is telling us about. And you know, anybody that has ever been on social media knows that it can be a very scary place out there. People are vilified, people are also put on a pedestal, and there are so many different angles depending on what news outlet you're watching, and where your information is coming from, whether you have a positive or a negative reaction to someone. And I think that this book really tries to dig in really tries to dig into that. Also, it does touch on politics. We have a specific character in this book that I found to be very interesting. Her name is Lenny. I won't tell you exactly what her relation to this story was, because I think that that's something you should find out for yourself in the book. But she was very interesting because she was a columnist, and she did have a lot of political views that she was very upfront with. And there's this very interesting interaction with her, exchange with her in one of the final chapters of the book where she's being interviewed. And I thought that even though I wasn't completely impressed with this book, I really was impressed with that section of the story where she was being interviewed, because it was something that was really unique, and I thought that Natasha Brown did a great job with that part of the story, because she was being interviewed and we got to hear the questions that were being asked, but we also had her inner dialogue where she was trying to figure out how she was gonna spin her answer to appease the masses of people that were watching. So you would hear her think of one thing and get her true opinion about it, but then she would spin it a different way so that everybody, you know, would still be on her side. So even though it wasn't what she was truly thinking or feeling or supporting, it was different from what she was actually saying with her words. So I thought that that was a really interesting take and a really cool way of getting her point across with this book. I will also say that this book really made me think a lot about all of these characters and how all of their motives were questionable. And when you're dealing with these people, it is such a slippery slope to not know if the person that you're talking to or you're getting your information from is actually being truthful. And it's a scary thought. You know, we're surrounded by people that we supposedly trust or should trust, and we might not be getting the most genuine parts of them whenever they're telling us things. So this book could also be taken as a warning to kind of be on your toes and pay attention to what is being said, but also compare the words to the clues that you're getting about their character otherwise. So I thought that that was a cool part of this. And yeah, I think that overall, this book did not live up to my expectations that I had based on Assembly, but I also don't think that it was a terrible book. I still think that Natasha Brown is a really exciting author, and what I also love about her is that it was the same with Assembly. This was a very short, quick read, and she is very sparse and vague with a lot of the things that she tells us. I think that she gives us enough information and she allows us to come to our own determination of how we're going to process the information that she is giving us. She's not necessarily telling us what is right or wrong. She's giving us the facts and she is letting us determine what we think. And I think that that's really interesting because she obviously has her own personal stance on what she believes, but I think that a lot of what she provides could also be up to the interpretation of the reader as well. I absolutely love her writing style. I love the fact that, like I said, it's so short and compact. She has a lot to say and she says it in very few words, and the way that she is able to get the reader engaged and get them to connect with these characters and have her themes come through very clearly in such a short period of time, I think that that is really a tell of what a talented author that she is. Comparing this to the other books that I have read, I would say, even though I was kind of middle of the road with this one as well, I will say that this book did something a little fresh and it did something different. So to me, it feels more like a book that could potentially make it on to the short list for those reasons, but time will tell. I don't think that this is my favorite book from this long list so far, but it certainly isn't one that I would deter anyone from reading. I definitely think that it was worth my while, and I, just like with Assembly and this one, I will read anything that Natasha Brown puts out in the future because I think that she truly is a talent, and I feel like she is young, and this is only her second book, I believe, and I think that she has a lot of great works to give to us in the future. So I'm really looking forward to that. And also, I am glad that it did make it onto the long list, because I had kind of pushed this one to the side and was going to get to much later because there were other books that I wanted to get to ahead of this one. But I am glad that the Booker did force me to read this earlier, because sometimes if I put a book off, I never circle back to it, and I am glad that I had a chance to read this one. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this book, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, and also if you could give me an update on where you are with your Booker journey and what your favorites are so far. I would love to hear that. Obviously, I am still working my way through my Booker reviews, so there should be more to come, and until we read again, bye!